Personal reflection. There's something about the American West that's always called to broken hearts. Maybe it's the mountains that don't care about your past, or the wide-open prairie that lets you breathe again when city walls press too close. This is a story about a woman who stepped off a train with a wedding dress in her trunk and a 2-line letter in her pocket. About a cowboy who'd forgotten what hope looked like until he saw her turn down 3 job offers in one afternoon. Sometimes the life we plan crumbles to dust, and sometimes, if we're blessed, something better rises from those ashes. Clara's palm pressed flat against the telegram counter. 3 crumpled forms lay beneath her hand, each one a different lie she couldn't make herself tell. Through the window, prospects sprawled in afternoon glare, false front buildings, freight wagons churning dust, strangers in wide-brimmed hats moving past like they had somewhere to be. She'd smoothed Thomas's letters so many times the ink smeared. Can't go through with it. You'll understand someday. 2 lines. 2 days on a train. Her stomach cramped. When had she last eaten Kansas City? Maybe. Stale bread that sat like a stone. The platform had emptied an hour ago. Families reunited. Wagons rolled away. The shadows stretched long and accusing. She was still standing there when the cowboy crossed the street. If you're settling in with a cup of coffee or tea while reading this, I'd love to know where you're joining us from today. There's comfort in knowing we're sharing this story across kitchen tables and front porches from coast to coast. Big Jack McGrew blocked the boarding house steps, shoulders like a bull, beard stained yellow at the mustache. The whiskey smell hit Clara before his words did sweet and sour, coating the back of her throat. You're that girl. Waiting for someone. Not a question. His eyes tracked down to her collar. Back up. Down again. Got refined manners. Eastern schooling. I'd wager. Clara shifted the carpetbag to her other hand. The leather handle had worn a groove across her palm during the 2-day journey. The groove throbbed now. Could use a girl like you at the Silver Dollar. He stepped closer, not touching, just close enough that her back hit the railing. Pour drinks upstairs for the poker games. Real genteel-like, $2 a night. His breath moved the loose hair at her temple. Clara's fingernails pressed crescents into her palm. No, thank you. Your man ain't coming, honey. His voice dropped, confidential, like they were friends sharing secrets. Best figure that out now. She slid sideways. He moved with her blocking. The railing dug into her spine through the calico dress. Excuse me. $2 is good money. Better than what you'll get scrubbing floors or... Clara ducked under his arm. Fast. Her shoulder brushed his vest, the fabric greasy under her touch. She was down the steps before he finished speaking, boots hitting the dirt street hard enough to jar her teeth. His laugh followed her. Gravel in a bucket. The laundry shed behind the hotel belched steam into the afternoon heat. Mrs. O'Malley stood over a copper tub, stirring sheets with a wooden paddle. Her hands were swollen red, skin cracked and bleeding around the fingernails. 50 cents a day, 6 days, dawn to dark. Clara watched those ruined hands move push, lift, ring, and walked away. The Fletcher mansion squatted on the hill. 3 stories, gingerbread trim. A maid in black led Clara to the parlor where Mrs. Fletcher reclined on a horsehair sofa. Cameo brooch the size of a silver dollar at her throat. Mr. Fletcher appreciates a household that runs smoothly. Very appreciative, if you take my meaning. Clara stood. The chair scraped loud. She was out the door before Mrs. Fletcher finished sputtering. The dry goods store had a bench out front. Clara sat, opened her coin purse, counted 38 cents. Enough for maybe 2 more nights at the boarding house. Her throat was dust dry. She needed water, but that cost money too. Across the street, a man leaned against a post. He'd been there when she went into the saloon, still there when she came out of the laundry shed, still there now. Watching. Boot steps crossed the street. Clara's shoulders pulled back. The surgical scissors were in her satchel, 6 inches of Sheffield steel, sharp enough to cut through muscle. If Big Jack came back, ma'am, not Big Jack. The man who'd been watching, 40 or so. Face weathered like old leather, faded denim shirt, dark with sweat under the arms. His Stetson had a salt ring around the crown. When he pulled it off, his hair stuck up funny on one side. Wasn't trying to be strange. He turned the hat brim in his hands. Watching you all afternoon. I mean, just seems like you turned down 3 jobs. Clara's jaw set. You were counting. Hard not to notice when a woman walks into 3 places and comes out looking like she'd rather starve. The sun pressed down on Clara's shoulders. Sweat trickled between her shoulder blades, soaking into the calico. Her throat was dust dry. She hadn't drunk water since the train. Maybe I would. He shifted weight to his other boot. The movement pulled his sleeve up. A scar ran from wrist to elbow, thick and ropey, white with age. What kind of work are you looking for? And Clara, exhausted down to her bones, furious at Thomas and herself and this whole God-forsaken town, told the truth. I'm a nurse. Trained at Pennsylvania Hospital for 3 years. Her voice came out steady despite everything. I came west to marry, but that... She stopped, breathed. I'm good at what I do, but I don't want to pour drinks for drunks or scrub rich women's floors or smile at men who think their money buys more than labor. He watched her face, long enough that heat climbed her neck. You afraid of hard work? His voice was rough, like he didn't use it much. Real hard, not just long hours. No. You mind isolation, 2 hours from town. No neighbors close by. No. You squeamish. Clara opened her medical satchel. The leather was cracked at the corners, worn soft from use. Inside brown bottles of laudanum and carbolic acid. Rolled bandages turning yellow at the edges. Surgical scissors. Obstetric forceps that had belonged to her mother. 3 scalpels in a felt-lined case. I've assisted in amputations. She met his eyes. They were brown, tired, shadowed underneath. Delivered breech babies, held intestines in place while a surgeon sutured perforations. Drained abscesses, set compound fractures. She closed the satchel with a snap. No, I'm not squeamish. His mouth quirked. Not quite a smile. Name's Jacob Cole. I got a ranch north of here. 3 men hurt bad in a rock slide last week. Gulch collapsed while they were moving cattle through. Clara's fingers tightened on the satchel handle. One's got busted ribs. Maybe lung damage. He's breathing shallow, spitting pink. One's got a leg wound that's going bad. Started clean, but now it's hot and there's red streaks climbing toward his hip. One's got a shoulder out of socket. Swelled up like a melon turned black. Town doctor won't come. Says it's too far for what I can pay. Jacob's jaw worked. A muscle jumped beneath the stubble. These men stayed with me when my wife was sick. Worked for promises instead of wages. Buried her with me when the doc said there was nothing to do. I ain't... He stopped. Started again. I ain't letting them die because they're poor. A wagon clattered past. Wheels grinding in the dirt. Dust rose, caught in Clara's throat. She coughed. You offering me what or charity? Work. No hesitation. You'd have a room. Nothing fancy, rope bed, washstand, window faces east. I'd ride to town for whatever supplies you need. Can't pay wages. Ranch is running on credit right now. But there's other folks out there need help too. Homesteaders, small ranchers. You could treat them. Trade for what you need, chickens for stitches, that kind of thing. So I'd be living on your property, alone with you and 3 injured men I've never met. Clara's voice stayed level. In the middle of nowhere. Jacob looked at her directly. Yes, ma'am. That's the situation. And if I don't like it, I'll bring you back. By sundown, if you want. A dog barked somewhere down the street. Someone hammered at the livery metal on metal, rhythmic and sharp. The sun slid lower, stretching shadows across the dirt. Clara's stomach cramped with hunger. When had she last eaten Kansas City? Maybe stale bread and hard cheese in the train depot. Her carpet bag held everything she owned: 3 dresses, 2 nightgowns, undergarments, stockings with darned heels, her mother's Bible, the medical textbooks she'd bought with money saved from nursing wages. Her trunk at the boarding house held the wedding dress she'd sewn herself, 40 yards of ivory silk, seed pearls at the collar. She'd never wear it now. 38 cents wouldn't get her back to Philadelphia. Wouldn't even get her to Denver. Your men, Clara said. The one with the leg wound. How long since the injury? 6 days. And the red streaks, how far up? Halfway to his groin this morning. Blood poisoning, moving fast. Another day, maybe 2, and it would reach his organs. Then nothing she could do would matter. The shoulder, can he move his fingers? Some, but they're going numb. Nerve damage from the swelling, if the pressure wasn't relieved soon. Permanent. Clara stood. Her legs trembled from sitting too long or from something else. She couldn't tell. I'll need to see them before I decide. Jacob nodded once. Fair enough. Let me get my wagon. He walked toward the livery. Clara watched him go, his gait slightly uneven, favoring his left leg. An old injury. Healed but not forgotten. He moved like a man who'd learned to work through pain. She looked down at her hands. The groove from the carpetbag handle had left a red welt across her palm. Her fingernails were rimmed with dust. These hands had delivered 11 babies, set 23 broken bones, stitched wounds in the charity ward while wealthy patients got the senior surgeons upstairs. These hands knew their work. The wagon rattled around the corner. Not a wagon, a buckboard. Worn bench, toolbox bolted to one side, a Winchester rifle stood in a boot near the seat. Clara's breath caught. Jacob saw her looking. For coyotes, he said. Just coyotes. She climbed up before she could change her mind. The buckboard dipped under her weight. Jacob handed up her carpetbag. Then her medical satchel. The leather was warm from the sun. Your trunk at the boarding house. Yes, I'll get it. He disappeared inside. Clara sat on the hard bench, reins loose in her lap, and looked back at Prospect, the town she'd arrived in 4 hours ago, the town where Thomas should have been waiting, the town she was leaving with a stranger. Jacob emerged carrying her horsehair trunk brass corners tarnished, her initials stamped in fading gold, C.M.B., Clara Margaret Brennan. Inside that trunk, the wedding dress, wrapped in tissue paper, along with all the foolish hope she'd carried west. He hoisted the trunk heavy, but manageable, and loaded it in the wagon bed. He climbed up beside her, took the reins. Ready? Clara's hands folded in her lap. The groove in her palm throbbed with each heartbeat. Yes. The wagon rolled north. Prospect shrank behind them. Buildings going small, then smaller, then gone. Prairie opened up on both sides. Grass gold in the slanting light. Mountains rose purple in the distance. The rifle bumped against Clara's boot with each rut in the road. She didn't look back. 2 hours north. The land changed. Trees thinned out cottonwoods first, then aspens, then just scattered juniper clinging to rocky ground. Prairie grass stretched knee-high on both sides, gold in the evening light. The wagon wheels cut through it, leaving twin tracks that closed up behind them like water. Jacob didn't talk, just drove, hands loose on the reins, eyes on the horizon. The roan gelding pulling the wagon had a steady gait, no hurry, no hesitation. Its hooves thudded rhythm against packed earth. Clara's backside went numb on the hard bench. She shifted. The wood creaked. Splinters caught in her skirt. Mountains rose ahead, purple and distant. Peaks still holding snow despite the summer heat. The sun dropped toward them, turning the sky orange, then pink, then the deep blue that comes before dark. The ranch appeared gradual. First, a fence line wire strung between weathered posts, some sagging where animals had pushed through. Then the barn, gray and listing slightly to the left, roof patched with different-colored shingles. Then the house, unpainted clapboard, single story. Shutters hung straight, but could use paint. The wood showed through in streaks. A rough bench sat on the bare porch, positioned to face west. No flower boxes. The door needed a new hinge. It hung crooked in the frame. Behind the house, a chicken coop tilted left. 6 horses stood in a corral, heads lifting as the wagon approached. A vegetable garden struggled near the back stunted tomato plants on stakes, bean vines climbing poles, squash leaves wilting in the heat. Loneliness pressed down like a hand on Clara's chest. No neighbors visible, no smoke from other chimneys, just prairie and mountains and this collection of weathered buildings fighting against wind and time. Jacob pulled the wagon to a stop near the house, set the brake, climbed down without offering to help Clara. She climbed down herself, her legs shook when her boots hit ground. "Bunkhouse is there." Jacob pointed to a low building behind the barn, chinked logs, mud stuffed between them. Single window, dark inside. "Men are waiting. I need to see my room first." He nodded, led her to the house. The door stuck. He shouldered it open. Inside kitchen and main room combined. Cast iron stove, scrubbed pine seam table. 2 chairs. A doorway led to a bedroom. She glimpsed a larger bed through the opening, quilt pulled tight across it. "Yours is back here." Jacob crossed to a second door, opened it. The room was bare, rope bed against one wall, straw ticking covered with a thin blanket, washstand with a chipped basin and pitcher, one window with a gingham curtain faded almost white from sun. Nothing else. "Window faces east," Jacob said. "Get morning light." Clara set her carpet bag on the bed. The ropes sagged under the weight. "Thank you. Bunkhouse when you're ready." He left. His boots crossed the main room. The door scraped open, closed. Clara poured water from the pitcher into the basin, splashed her face. The water was warm, tasted of minerals. She dried on her sleeve, opened her medical satchel. The instruments inside caught the last daylight coming through the window scissors, forceps, scalpels. Her mother's tools, Her tools now. She closed the satchel, picked it up, walked out. The bunkhouse door stuck warped wood against warped frame. Clara pushed. It scraped open. The smell hit first. Sweat, old and fresh, leather, hay, and underneath, sour sweet rot that made her stomach drop. 3 men on rope beds. The room was dim single window letting in dusk light, not enough to see clearly. A potbelly stove squatted in the corner, cold now, trunks at the foot of each bed. Clothing hung on pegs, dust thick on the floor. The Mexican man pushed up on one elbow when Clara entered. His face went gray. He sucked air through his teeth, lay back down fast. His breathing came shallow in careful broken ribs. Definitely. Maybe worse. The young one thrashed under a thin blanket, head turning side to side. Fever sweat soaked his hair dark. His eyes opened, unfocused, fever bright. He said something words that didn't make sense. Then his eyes rolled back. The old man sat upright on the third bed, back against the wall. His left shoulder bulged, wrong, swollen, huge. The joint lumpy and purple-black under his shirt. The fabric wouldn't close over it. He watched Clara with eyes narrowed and suspicious. "You're the nurse," his voice rasped. "I am. You any good? You'll know soon enough." Clara set her satchel on the nearest trunk. "I need boiling water. Lots of it. Clean cloths, sheets, towels, anything cotton, soap, more lamps, and whiskey." Jacob appeared in the doorway. "I'll get it." He left. Clara rolled up her sleeves, the fabric tight around her forearms, restricting. She unbuttoned the cuffs, rolled them higher. Her skin was pale against the gray calico. She opened her satchel, arranged the instruments on the trunk in order scissors. Forceps, needles, scalpels, carbolic acid, laudanum. The brown bottles caught lamplight. The young man, Tommy, Jacob had called him, moaned, a sound like an animal caught in wire. His leg moved under the blanket, pulled up, straightened, pulled up again. Clara went to him first. The blanket came off. His leg was wrapped in what had been a clean sheet, past tense. Now it was brown with dried blood and yellow with seepage. The cloth stuck to his skin. She peeled it away slow, where it had dried to the wound. Skin came with it. Tommy screamed, bit his lip. Blood welled bright against his teeth. Clara kept working. The wound ran from knee to ankle, jagged, deep, edges ragged like torn cloth. Pus thick as cream filled it. Red streaks climbed from the wound toward his groin, blood poisoning, advancing fast. Another day and it would reach his organs. 2 days and he'd be dead. Jacob returned with a pot of water, steam rising, set it on the stove, lit the stove kindling, caught. Flames licked up. He brought armfuls of cloth old sheets, torn into strips, a bar of brown soap, 2 more lamps, a bottle of whiskey. "Hold him," Clara said. Jacob moved to the head of the bed, put his hands on Tommy's shoulders. Clara poured carbolic acid into the wound. Tommy's back arched. He screamed high and thin. His heels drummed against the bed frame. The ropes creaked. Jacob held him down. The carbolic fizzed in the infected tissue. Clara used the forceps to pull away dead flesh, gray and soft, coming apart under the metal. Tommy passed out. His body went slack. Better. She flushed the wound with boiled water. Once, twice, 3 times, and the water ran pink, then red, then pink again. She packed the wound with gauze soaked in diluted carbolic, wrapped it snug but not tight, elevated his leg on a folded blanket. Her hands cramped. Lower back screamed. She ignored both. The Mexican man, Miguel, watched from his bed. His breathing was careful, shallow. Each inhale stopped halfway. Clara went to him. "Let me see." He pulled his shirt up slow. His torso was wrapped in dirty cloth and attempted binding. Clara unwrapped it. His ribs showed purple-black bruises, swelling on the left side. When she pressed gentle fingers there, he hissed, "Two broken? Maybe three." She could feel the displacement under his skin bones, not quite aligned. "I'll bind them proper. You'll need to stay still." "How long?" 6 weeks. He closed his eyes. She wrapped his ribs with clean strips of sheet, tight enough to stabilize, not so tight he couldn't breathe. His skin was hot under her hands, not fever, just the heat of injury. When she finished, he could take deeper breaths. The old man Pete watched everything. His jaw worked. The shoulder joint bulged obscene under his skin, dislocated and swollen. "You next," Clara said. "Don't need a woman poking at me." "Then you'll lose use of that arm. Your choice," he muttered under his breath. Didn't refuse. Clara examined the shoulder without touching. The joint had been out for 6 days. The capsule would be swollen tight, nerve damage possible. Reduction would hurt. A lot. "This is going to be bad," she said. "I can give you laudanum. Save it for the kid." "The kid's unconscious. You're not—" Pete's mouth set in a line. "No laudanum." Clara looked at Jacob. "Hold him. Don't let him move." Jacob positioned himself behind Pete, arms wrapped around the old man's chest, pinning him to the bed frame. Clara grasped Pete's wrist and elbow, pulled steady traction. The shoulder resisted swollen tissue holding the joint out of place. She pulled harder. Pete's face went white. Sweat beaded on his forehead. She rotated the arm external, felt for the socket with her other hand. The humeral head was displaced anterior and inferior. She pushed, pulled, rotated it. Pete screamed. The joint popped back into place with a sound like a branch breaking. Pete went limp. Jacob released him. The old man's breathing came in gasps. Clara bound the shoulder tight to his body. "Don't lift anything for 2 weeks. Don't raise this arm above your head for a month. 2 weeks." Pete's voice was weak. "I got work. Then you'll destroy the joint and never lift anything again." He didn't argue more. Clara stood. Her back ached. Her hands trembled, the first tremor she'd allowed since entering the bunkhouse. The lamplight wavered. Jacob stood near the door. "They're going to make it. Ask me in 10 days. The lamps burned low, shadows huge on the walls. 3 men breathing easier than they had in days. Clara sat on the empty 4th bed, blood dried brown under her fingernails. Outside, something howled. Not a dog, something wild. The roosters screamed at 4:30. Clara woke in stages, first confused by the unfamiliar ceiling, then by the rope bed beneath her that sagged in the middle, then by memory flooding back. The ranch. The wounded men. Jacob Cole with his tired eyes and scarred arm. Her room was still dark. Through the window. Sky showed deep blue edging toward gray. She sat up. Her back complained the straw ticking had compressed during the night, leaving the ropes pressing through. Her neck was stiff. She'd slept in her clothes, too exhausted to undress. The washstand held a pitcher and basin. She poured water It splashed cold into the chipped enamel. The sound was loud in the quiet room. She cupped her hands, brought water to her face. The cold shocked her awake. Droplets ran down her neck, soaked into her collar. She finger-combed her hair, pinned it up. Half of it escaped immediately, fine strands that wouldn't stay. She gave up. On the chair by the door sat a folded wool skirt, not hers, bigger in the waist, shorter in the hem. Someone had left it there while she slept. She pulled off her rumpled calico dress, pulled on the wool skirt. It hung loose on her hips. She tied it tighter with the waist strings, rolled the hem up once. The wool scratched against her legs. The main room was empty when she crossed it. Dawn light through the eastern window turned everything gray and blue. The stove was cold. Jacob's bedroom door stood closed. Outside, the air bit cold. Summer mornings in the mountains, the heat hadn't reached down from the sky yet. Clara's breath showed white. She crossed the yard to the bunkhouse. Chickens scattered from under her feet, squawking protests. The bunkhouse door scraped open. Inside, the smell had changed. Still sweat and leather, but the sour, sweet rot was fainter. Tommy slept on his back, breathing deep and even. No more thrashing, no more fever tossing. His face was slack with real sleep. Clara touched his forehead. Cool, dry. She pulled back the blanket, unwrapped the dressing on his leg. The wound looked clean pink edges. No pus, no red streaks. The infection had stopped climbing. She rewrapped it with fresh gauze, tied it off. Miguel watched from his bed. His eyes were clear, alert. "You're good at this," he said. "I am. My wife, Carmen. She'll want to thank you. Bring something. Tell her I like anything that isn't hardtack." Clara moved to his bed. Deep breath. He inhaled, stopped halfway, winced. "Better than yesterday. See? Yes." She checked his binding. Still tight, still positioned right. "Another week. Then you can start moving more." Pete snored in the corner. The sound rattled wet in his throat. Clara crossed it to him. He growled awake when she touched his shoulder. "Didn't say you could touch me." "I just did." She palpated the joint through the binding. The swelling had gone down, not much, but some. "Healing clean. Don't lift anything for 2 weeks." 2 weeks. Pete pushed himself up with his good arm. "Woman, I got fences to mend, horses to, then you'll ruin the shoulder permanently. Your choice." He muttered. Something about interfering females and doctors who didn't know ranch work, but he didn't try to get up. Clara left them, crossed the yard again. The sun had broken the horizon, orange light spilling across the prairie, turning the grass gold. The mountains went from purple to pink to that deep green blue of pine forests catching first light. Inside the house, the stove was lit. Jacob stood at it, stirring something in a cast-iron pot. Bacon sizzled in a skillet. Coffee boiled black in a dented tin pot on the back burner. He didn't turn when she entered. Clara sat at the table. 2 tin plates already set out, 2 forks, 2 blue graniteware mugs with chipped rims. Jacob dished cornmeal mush into the plates, added bacon, poured coffee that steamed bitter and strong, set a plate in front of Clara, sat across from her, with his own. They ate. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just quiet. Clara was too tired for conversation. Her hands shook slightly. When she lifted the mug, exhaustion or hunger. She couldn't tell. The coffee was strong enough to scour. She drank it anyway. The mush was plain, no sugar, no butter, just cornmeal and water, cooked until it thickened. The bacon was salty, crisp at the edges. She ate everything on her plate. Jacob pushed food around with his fork. "You did good last night. They're not safe yet, but they will be." He looked up. "I can see it." Clara studied him in the morning light. Stubble on his jaw, 3 days' worth, maybe 4, lines around his eyes like he'd spent years squinting into sun. That scar on his forearm, thick and white, catching the light when he moved. He kept touching it without seeming to know thumb rubbing the puckered tissue. "How long has your wife been gone?" The question came out before Clara could stop it. Jacob's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down, careful, deliberate. 2 years, little more. "I'm sorry. Sarah was—" He stopped. Started again. "She was strong, stronger than me. But when the fever came—" He pushed mush around his plate. The fork scraped against tin. "Doc couldn't help, or wouldn't. By the time I got her to town, she was already—" He didn't finish. Clara waited, sipped coffee, let him take his time. She wanted this place to mean something. Jacob's voice went rough. "Wanted to help folks. I just wanted to run cattle and be left alone." He finally looked up. "Guess now I'm trying to do both." Outside, a horse whinnied. The chickens fussed in their coop. Somewhere distant, a hawk cried. "You got people back east?" Jacob asked. "Besides the man who didn't show up. Father, 2 brothers." Clara wrapped both hands around her mug. The tin was hot enough to hurt. "They wanted me to marry well, manage a household. Thought nursing was beneath me." "That why you left?" "Partly." She drank more coffee, bitter enough to make her teeth ache. "Mostly I left because I'm good at medicine and terrible at drawing rooms." Jacob's mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost. The days folded into pattern. Clara checked the men at dawn, unwrapped wounds, cleaned them, rewrapped, over the next 10 days. Tommy's fever stayed down. The infection retreated day by day, red streaks fading to pink. Then gone. His leg closed, pink and clean. New skin growing over the gash. Miguel breathed deeper each day, the broken ribs knitting together slow but steady. He told her about his children, 3 boys and a girl. The oldest was 8. They lived in a town with Carmen's mother while Miguel worked the ranch. He sent money when he could. Pete complained about everything. The food, the bed, the binding too tight, the binding too loose. Clara was too rough. Clara took too long. His complaints got louder each day. Clara didn't mind. Complaining meant healing. Between medical rounds, Clara helped with ranch work. The chickens needed feeding, vicious little creatures that pecked at her boots and flew at her face when she scattered grain. The garden needed tending. She pulled weeds from between the tomato plants, picked beans, watered the squash. Dirt got under her fingernails. She liked it there. Jacob came in for lunch each day. They ate the same way, quiet, companionable. He'd ask about the men. She'd tell him. He'd nod, go back to work. Evenings. She found him on the bench, facing west. Rough pine boards, no back, positioned to watch the mountains turn purple as the sun dropped. He'd have 2 mugs of coffee waiting. She'd sit. They'd drink. Sometimes they talked. "Your scar?" Clara said one evening. The sky was orange and pink, Clouds lit from underneath. You said it was a horse. Yeah, Jacob stared at the mountains. Gelding threw me 6 years back. I was green, thought I knew better than I did. Horse stomped me while I was down. Tore the arm open wrist to elbow. Town doctor on drunk. Jacob's thumb rubbed the scar, unconscious movement. Couldn't wait for him to sober up. Did it myself. Carbolic and needle and a lot of words I won't repeat. Clara looked at the scar. Long, clean. Edges lined up proper. You did good work. Hurt like... He stopped. Hurt bad. I imagine another evening, darker. Stars showing. You ever lose somebody? Jacob asked. In the hospital. Lose them and know it was your fault. Clara was quiet. The coffee in her mug had gone cold. She set it down. Yes. A woman in labor. First baby. She was bleeding, but I didn't recognize how much. Not until it was too late. By the time I called the doctor. She stopped. The words stuck in her throat. Yes. Jacob nodded and didn't say it wasn't her fault. Didn't offer false comforts, just, me too. War, couple times. They didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. Small kindnesses appeared. A jar of wildflowers by Clara's washstand, one morning purple columbine and yellow daisies, stems cut clean, the squeaky hinge on her door fixed, extra firewood stacked by the stove. Clara noticed Jacob watching her sometimes. When she came back from checking the men, when she worked in the garden, when she sat across from him at meals, not staring, just watching, like he was figuring something out. One evening, late September, the air sharp with coming cold. They sat on the bench. Clara's shoulder nearly touched Jacob's. Nearly. An inch of space between them, close enough to feel his warmth. Not close enough to be improper. The mountains went black against the darkening sky. Coffee steamed in their mugs. Neither spoke. Clara's hand rested on the bench between them. Jacob's hand rested there, too. Their fingers didn't touch. Almost. Nearly. A wagon rattled up the road in the distance. Fast. Too fast for evening travel. The sound grew louder, wheels grinding, horse hooves drumming hard. Jacob stood. His hand dropped to his hip where a gun wasn't. Old habit. The wagon came into view, a woman driving, whipping the reins, someone small in the wagon bed behind her. She was screaming. The wagon skidded to a stop in the yard. Dust rose thick, caught in Clara's throat. The woman jumped down before the wheels stopped turning 40-something, sun-weathered. Strong arms hauling the reins. In the wagon bed, a girl maybe 8 years old sat cradling her left hand against her chest, even in the dim light. Clara could see the child's face gray-white, lips pressed together, not crying but shaking. Pulled a pata off the stove. The woman was already lifting the girl. Boiling water all down her hand and arm. I cleaned it, but I don't know what else. Bring her inside. Clara moved fast toward the house, Jacob ahead of her, shoving the door open. Lay her on the kitchen table. The woman, Mrs. Yates, Clara remembered from somewhere, carried the girl like she weighed nothing. Set her on the scrubbed pine. The child whimpered. First sound she'd made. Emma. Mrs. Yates smoothed the girl's hair back. This is the nurse. She's going to help. Clara was already at the table. Emma, I need to see your hand. The girl held her arm tighter against her chest. Her whole body shook. It's going to hurt when I look, Clara said. No point lying to children. But then I can make it better. Can you be brave? Emma's chin trembled. She nodded. held out her arm, slow. Mrs. Yates had wrapped it in a dish towel, clean cotton, now soaked through with seepage. Clara unwrapped it careful. The cloth stuck where fluid had dried. Emma gasped but held still. The burn ran from palm to elbow, angry red, blisters already forming, some small as pinheads, some large as pennies, filled with clear fluid. One patch near the wrist had gone white-gray. The skin there had cooked through, second degree verging on third. Clara touched the skin around the burn, not the burn itself, just near it. Hot, tight, already swelling. "This is going to hurt," she said again. Direct, honest. "But then it'll feel better. I promise." Emma's eyes filled, but she nodded. Jacob appeared with the water pitcher. Clara poured it over the burn, cool water running over red skin. Emma sucked air through her teeth. Her free hand gripped the table edge, knuckles white. Clara kept pouring. The water carried away bits of loose skin, debris from the wound. When the pitcher emptied, she examined closer. The blisters were intact good. Breaking them would invite infection. But that white patch worried her. Third-degree burns didn't heal on their own. Needed grafting sometimes. Scarring always. She went to her room, grabbed her medical satchel. Back to the kitchen. Emma watched with huge eyes. From the satchel, a brown bottle. Clara uncorked it. The smell of honey filled the kitchen suite. Thick. She poured it over her palm. Worked it between her fingers until it warmed. "This is honey," she told Emma. "It's going to help the burn heal. Won't hurt. Might feel good." She slathered honey over the entire burn. Thick coating, covering every inch of damaged skin. The honey would keep infection out, keep the wound moist, help new skin grow. Old remedy, worked better than most new ones. Emma's face relaxed. Just slightly. The honey was cool against the burn, soothing. Clara wrapped the arm in clean strips of sheet torn from her own spare linens, covered the honey, protected it from dirt and air, tied it off gentle at the shoulder. "Keep it wrapped," she told Mrs. Yates. "Change the dressing twice a day, morning and evening. Wash the burn with cool water. More honey each time. Clean cloth. Come back in 3 days so I can check it." Mrs. Yates held her daughter, rocked slightly without seeming to know it. We don't have much. The doctor in town. He won't come out for folks like us." "Too far," Clara said. Flat. "Too poor. I know. I got eggs in the wagon, some preserves, beans from my garden." "That's fine, and whatever you can spare." Mrs. Yates went to the wagon, came back with a basket, 2 dozen eggs nested in straw, 3 jars of preserves that looked like plum from the purple color, a cloth sack heavy with dried beans. She set it all on the table. Before leaving, she gripped Clara's hands, tight. Her palms were rough with calluses, fingernails cracked. "There's more like us out here," she said. "More who need help. If you stayed." The wagon rolled away. Dust settled in its wake. Clara stood in the yard, basket heavy in her arms. The sun had set completely sky-purple overhead. Stars starting to show. She could see thin smoke columns rising in the distance. Other homesteads. How many times 20 more she went inside, put the eggs in the cold cellar, the preserves on a shelf, the beans in a tin. Jacob watched from the doorway. "That girl's lucky," he said. "Lucky it wasn't worse. That white patch might scar bad. But she'll keep the hand." "Yes." "Because you were here." Clara didn't answer. Went to her room. I lay on the rope bed, still wearing the borrowed skirt and her work blouse. Stared at the ceiling. The straw ticking rustled when she moved. Outside, the chickens settled in their coop with soft clucking sounds. She couldn't sleep. Her mind kept circling Emma's face, going gray with pain. Mrs. Yates's rough hands gripping hers, those smoke columns in the distance. More like us, more who need help. Finally, she gave up, pulled on her boots, walked out. Jacob sat on the bench, always there in the evenings. Seemed like staring at mountains he couldn't see in the dark. Clara sat beside him. The bench creaked. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Nope." The crickets sawed in the grass. Somewhere far off, a coyote yipped. Another answered. "There are more," Clara said. Her voice came out rougher than she meant. More like Mrs. Yates. More who need help, but can't get it. "I know. What if—" She stopped, started again. "What if I stayed, not just until your men heal? What if I stayed and we made this a proper clinic, a place folks can count on?" Jacob was quiet. Long enough that Clara thought he wouldn't answer. A bat swooped past, black against the stars. The coyote yipped again, closer. "Sarah wanted that." His voice cracked on the name, first time Clara had heard it do that. A place where folks didn't have to choose between eating and getting doctored. He stopped. Breathed. I didn't." Another stop. "Maybe I could help you build it." "It'd be hard." Clara's hands laced together in her lap. Tight. "We'd have to fund it somehow. Barter won't cover everything. I got cattle, could sell some head, and the barn, there's a back room we don't use, could clear it out. I'd need supplies, more medicine, proper equipment, a clean space. Make a list. I'll get it. Just like that. No hemming, no conditions." Clara looked at him. His profile in starlight's strong nose, stubbled jaw, that scar on his arm. Visible even in the dark. "You mean it?" "Yeah." Something loosened in Clara's chest. A knot she hadn't known was there. "Then let's do it." They went inside. Jacob found brown paper, wrapping paper from the dry goods store. One side still printed flour 50 pounds. Clara smoothed it on the kitchen table. He produced a carpenter's pencil from his pocket-flat sides. Soft lead. She sketched while he watched. Rough rectangle for the barn's back room. X for where a stove could go. The lines for shelving along the walls. "Examination table here." She tapped the pencil on the paper. "Stove here for sterilizing instruments. Shelves for supplies, bandages, medicines, tools. Maybe a curtain for privacy when examining women." Jacob leaned over her shoulder, added notes in cramped handwriting along the margins, lumber check barn loft. Hinges got some in shed. Stove borrow from bunkhouse. Clara flipped the paper, started a list on the blank side. Carbolic acid, more bandages, forceps, 2 more pairs, splints, wood and padding, sutures, laudanum, ether if possible, herbs for poultices, willow bark, yarrow, comfrey root. Jacob calculated costs, chewed the pencil, left tooth marks in the wood. Could work, if we're careful, if folks pay and trade food, labor, supplies. No money. Can't charge people who don't have it. He set the pencil down. But they can help build the place, help maintain it. Their fingers both rested on the paper, almost touching. Lamplight made their shadows huge on the wall, 2 heads bent together. Planning. "This what you want?" Jacob asked. Quiet. "Really?" Clara looked at the sketch, at his handwriting next to hers, at the future taking shape in brown paper and a carpenter's pencil. Yes, this is exactly what I want. They sat there while the lamp burned lower, planning, revising. Jacob knew how to frame walls, where to get lumber cheap, which neighbors might help. Clara knew what supplies were essential, what could wait, how to organize a treatment space. By the time the lamp guttered, they had a plan, rough but real. The barn's back room, 20 feet by 15. Clean it out, build shelves, install a stove with proper ventilation, examination table from somewhere, maybe the old Morrison place still had furniture, curtain for privacy. Whitewash the walls, make it clean, make it work. Clara walked to her room. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind raced. They could do this. They could actually do this. A place where people like Mrs. Yates could bring their children. Where homesteaders could get stitched up without riding 2 hours to town. Where having no money didn't mean watching your family suffer. She lay on the rope bed, closed her eyes. Sleep came finally. Deep and dreamless. 3 weeks later, late September, the barn's back room had walls framed but no roof yet. Miguel and Tommy, both moving careful but moving, worked with Jacob to raise the rafters. Pete held boards steady with his good arm, muttering about interfering women and fool projects. Clara was in the garden pulling the last of the summer squash when she heard the horse. Not a wagon this time. Single rider, coming fast. She straightened, one hand pressed to her lower back. The rider was young 16, maybe 17 on a lathered horse. He pulled up hard in the yard. "You the nurse?" "I am. My ma's having her baby. Something's wrong. She's been laboring since yesterday, and the baby won't come, and she's bleeding, and—" His voice broke. "Please." Clara was already moving toward the house. "How far? Hour's ride? Maybe more." "Jacob," she called toward the barn. He appeared, hammer still in hand. "I need the wagon. Now." The boy's mother lived in a soddy earth walls, grass roof. One room divided by a blanket hung on a rope. The woman lay on a narrow bed in the back section, sheets soaked dark with blood. Too much blood. Her face was gray, lips blue-tinged. Another woman, neighbor, maybe pressed cloths between her legs. The cloths came away red, saturated. Clara pushed up her sleeves. "How long has she been bleeding like this?" "Since early morning. Baby won't come. Something's wrong with how it's positioned." Clara examined. The baby was stuck shoulder presentation, lodged sideways in the birth canal. No way it was coming out on its own. The mother was running out of time. The lamp cast shadows that jumped and flickered. Outside, the boy paced. Jacob stood by the door, silent. Clara worked her hands inside, felt for the baby's position. Found an arm, a shoulder. The head turned wrong. She had to reposition it. Had to turn the baby while it was still inside. Had to do it fast before the mother bled out. Her hands worked blind, guided by touch and training and desperation. The baby turned, inch by inch. Clara's arm shook with effort. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Finally, the head the mother pushed. The baby came in a rush of blood and fluid. A girl. Red and wrinkled and not breathing. Clara cleared the baby's mouth with her finger, rubbed the small back. No response. She turned the baby over, put her mouth over the tiny nose and mouth, breathed once, twice. 3 times. The baby gasped, cried, that thin, angry wail of new life. The mother wept. The neighbor wept. The boy outside whooped. Clara cut and tied the cord, wrapped the baby in a clean sheet, placed her in her mother's arms, then turned to the bleeding, delivered the afterbirth intact. No pieces left inside. Packed the woman with cloths soaked in diluted carbolic. The bleeding slowed, stopped. By the time Clara stumbled outside, dawn was breaking. She sat on the ground next to the wagon. Her dress was soaked with blood and birth fluid. Her hands shook. She couldn't make them stop. Jacob appeared with a canteen. She drank. Water had never tasted so good. "They're going to be okay?" he asked. "Yes." "Now, because of you." Clara didn't answer. Just sat there while the sun came up, painting the prairie gold, and let herself shake. The family paid with a smoked ham and a promise to help build the clinic. The boy's father showed up 2 days later with lumber and strong arms. Word spread. Over the next week, 6 more patients found their way to the ranch. An elderly man with an infected tooth, Clara extracted it with forceps, had him rinse with whiskey. He paid in firewood, delivered a month's worth stacked neat by the house. A child with fever and rash, scarlet fever, but mild. Clara isolated her in the bunkhouse corner, dosed her with quinine bark tea, monitored her close. She recovered. The mother brought eggs every week after. A ranch hand with a gash from barbed wire. 20 stitches, neat and close. He paid in labor, built Clara a medicine cabinet with 12 drawers, each one labeled in careful printing. The clinic took shape. Walls went up. Roof followed. Inside, shelves lined 2 walls. An examination table appeared. Someone knew someone who knew about Doc Morrison's widow cleaning out the old office. It was scarred and stained, but sturdy. Women from nearby homesteads came to help, whitewashed the walls, sewed curtains from flour sacks, organized supplies in canning jars, 1 jar of needles and sutures, 1 jar of bandage rolls, 1 jar of carbolic cigged cotton. Clara worked alongside them, her hands blistered, calloused, healed rough. She didn't care. This was hers, theirs. By the time the first October cold hit, the clinic was ready. A stove piped into the barn's main chimney, examination table by the window for light, shelves stocked with supplies bought, bartered, and donated, curtain hanging on brass rings for privacy. Opening day. A young father carried his son in, the boy cradling a broken arm. Mule kick. Clara set the fracture quick, clean, competent. Splinted it with shaped pine and cloth strips. The father paid with a ham wrapped in muslin. By week's end, 8 more patients had come, each paying what they could. Food, labor, goods, the barter system worked. One evening, first week of October, Clara and Jacob sat on their bench. The air had turned cold enough for a shawl. Stars pricked through, bright and hard. "I'm falling in love with you," Jacob said. Not a question. Statement. Fact. Clara's breath stopped. She'd known, felt it in the way he watched her, the way he always brought her coffee at just the right time, the way his hand had lingered on hers when passing the hammer during the clinic building. But hearing it out loud made it real, made it dangerous. She could deflect, protect herself. "After Thomas, after everything I know," she said instead. "I am too," the words came out steady. Surer than she felt, Jacob looked at her, and his eyes caught starlight. Didn't plan on this. Neither did I. After Sarah, he stopped. Feels like I know. Clara's hand found his on the bench between them. But maybe she'd be glad you're alive again. His hand closed around hers. Rough, scarred, strong. They sat like that while full dark came. Not kissing, not rushing. Just hands clasped, breathing the same air. Above them, stars wheeled. Around them, prairie grass whispered. Somewhere distant, a coyote sang. In the barn, the clinic waited. Clean walls, stocked shelves, everything they'd built together. And in town, 2 hours south, Thomas was probably drinking in some saloon, or gambling, or chasing some other woman. Clara realized she hadn't thought about him in weeks. Her life was here now, with this man beside her, with this work they'd created, with this community they served. But something still whispered at the edges, some unfinished piece, some question not yet answered. What would happen when winter came? Late October. The sky changed overnight. Clara woke to wrong light gray-green through the window, oppressive and heavy. The air pressed down. Even inside the house, her skin felt damp. Jacob was already up, standing at the kitchen window. Storm coming. Clara joined him. The sky to the west had gone dark, not regular cloud dark, but bruised purple-black. Lightning flickered inside the clouds, silent this far away. The mountains had disappeared behind the advancing wall. Big one, Jacob said. Help me secure everything. They worked fast, horses into the barn. Despite their rolling eyes and pinned ears, they knew. Chickens into the coop, which took forever because chickens were stupid and ran everywhere except where you wanted them. Tools into the shed, shutters latched on all the buildings. Wind picked up, gentle at first, then not. It pulled at Clara's skirt, whipped her hair loose from its pins. Strands lashed across her face. The first drops fell fat and cold, hitting hard enough to sting. Then more, then sheets of it, coming sideways, driven by wind that screamed. Thunder cracked close enough that Clara felt it in her chest. Lightning turned everything white for a heartbeat. She couldn't see the barn, couldn't see the house. Just gray water everywhere. The clinic! Clara ran. Jacob shouted something behind her, but the wind tore his words away. She reached the barn, shoved the door. It fought her wind, pressing it closed. She leaned her whole weight, got it open enough to slip through. Inside, chaos. Rain poured through gaps in the roof. The section they'd built for the clinic, the new section, water sheeted down like a waterfall. The shelves. Her supplies. Everything they'd built. Clara ran to the clinic room. Her boots splashed through water already ankle-deep. The shelves were collapsing, one had already fallen. Bandages tumbling into the flood, medicine bottles crashing. Brown glass shattered under her feet. She grabbed what she could. The forceps case got it. The laudanum bottle grabbed it, hugged it to her chest. The carbolic acid. Her mother's scalpels in their felt-lined case. The roof groaned. A sound like the barn was dying. Clara. Jacob was there, soaked through, grabbing her arm. Get out. The supplies, now. A section of roof tore away, not fell tore. Wind ripped it off like paper. Rain poured through the gap, waterfall loud. The new examination table, the one they'd gotten from Doc Morrison's widow, collapsed under the weight of water. The wood splintered. Lightning struck close. The flash, the crack, The smell of burned air all at once. The barn shuddered. Jacob dragged Clara toward the door. She fought him. There was more. She could save more, but he was stronger. They stumbled outside. The yard had become a lake. Water rushed past their ankles. Clara's boots sank in mud. She pulled one foot up, the boot stayed behind. Sucked down. She stumbled. Fell to one knee. Water soaked through her skirt, cold and viscous. Jacob hauled her up. They made it to the house. Inside. Jacob slammed the door. The wind rattled it in the frame. Water ran down Clara's face. Rain or tears. She couldn't tell. Her arms were full of supplies. She set them on the table. The forceps case. The laudanum bottle. 3 scalpels. The carbolic acid bottle cracked, leaking brown liquid onto the pine. That was all she'd saved. The storm screamed for hours. Thunder, lightning, wind that made the house groan. Water found every crack. Dripped from the ceiling, pooled on the floor. Clara and Jacob set out pots and pans to catch it. The metal ping, ping, ping of drops filled the silence between thunder. By dawn, the storm had passed, left behind mud and ruin. Clara stood in the barn doorway, didn't go in, couldn't yet. The clinic section, their clinic, was destroyed. Roof half gone, gaping hole showing sky, water pooled ankle-deep on the floor. Everything they'd built collapsed. Soaked, ruined. The shelves sagged where they hadn't fallen completely. Bandages floating in brown water. Medicine bottles, the ones that hadn't shattered, lying in mud. Her carefully organized supplies gone. The paper records she'd started keeping, noting each patient's name and treatment pulped to illegible mush on the sodden floor. Clara stepped inside. Her boot she'd found it in the yard, pulled it from the sucking mud, squelched. Water soaked through immediately. Cold climbed her leg. She picked up a bandage roll. It came apart in her hands, waterlogged and mildewed already. She dropped it. It hit the water with a soft plop. The medicine cabinet, the grateful ranch hand had built 12 drawers. Each, labeled in careful printing, lay on its side. Drawers pulled open by the fall. Contents spilled. She knelt in the water, dug through the mud and debris, found 3 needles, a spool of surgical silk, soaked, a bottle of quinine, broken. Her hands were black with mud. It caked under her fingernails, streaked her forearms. Her skirt was soaked to the waist, heavy with water and filth. Her hair hung in wet ropes, mud-flecked. Miguel appeared in the doorway, Tommy behind him, both moving slow, careful. They looked at the destruction. Didn't say anything. What was there to say? Clara sat back on her heels. The water soaked through, cold against her legs, mud everywhere, in her hair, on her face, coating her hands. She looked down at herself, filthy, soaked, pathetic. A week ago, she'd been helping people, running a real clinic. Now she was sitting in mud, in a ruined barn, holding 3 bent needles like they were treasure. What had she been thinking? That she could make a difference here, that a nurse from Philadelphia could run a frontier clinic from a barn, that barter and good intentions would be enough. Thomas had been right to leave her. She was foolish, naive. Thought she could help people when she couldn't even keep supplies dry. Her throat closed. She wouldn't cry, wouldn't give in to it. But her chest felt crushed, like Miguel's ribs had been broken, unable to draw full breath. She'd failed, built something, and watched it collapse. The people who'd brought eggs and ham and firewood, what would she tell them? Sorry, the clinic's gone. Can't help you anymore. You'll have to ride to town, after all, Clara pushed to her feet. The water sucked at her boots. She walked out of the barn, across the mud-churned yard, didn't look at Jacob standing by the house, didn't look at anyone, went to her room, closed the door, sat on the rope bed in her wet, mud-caked clothes and stared at nothing. The sun came up. Light crawled across the floor. Clara didn't move. A knock. "Clara!" Jacob's voice, rough. "You need anything?" She didn't answer. Later minutes or hours. She couldn't tell the door opened. Jacob came in. Didn't ask permission. Sat beside her on the bed. The ropes creaked. They sat in silence. Clara's clothes dripped on the floor. Mud dried on her hands, cracking. "Sarah died of fever," Jacob said finally. His voice was quiet, careful, like he was testing each word before speaking it. "Took 3 days. I knew she was bad, but I kept thinking she'd turn around, that she'd get better like she always did." He stopped, breathed. "By the time I admitted it was serious, by the time I got her on a wagon to town, she was already dying." Clara's hands lay limp in her lap. Muddy, useless. Town doc looked at her maybe 5 minutes, said there was nothing to do. Nothing to do. Jacob's voice cracked. "I could have gotten her there sooner, could have admitted it sooner, but I was scared and stupid, and by the time I stopped being both, it was too late." Clara turned her head, looked at him. He was staring at the floor, jaw working. "I could sell this place," he continued. "Move to Denver, get a job working for someone else, live in a boarding house, be done with it." He finally looked at her. His eyes were red-rimmed. But then what was it for? What was any of it for Sarah dying? You coming here? Building the clinic? All of it just to give up when it gets hard. Clara's throat ached. "It's not just hard. It's gone. Destroyed. So we build it again. With what? We lost everything. Not everything." He nodded toward the kitchen where her saved supplies sat. "You got the important tools. The rest we can get more. I'll sell cattle. Sell horses if I have to. The patients. We'll wait. Or they'll come anyway. You saved that baby. You saved Emma's hand. You think Mrs. Yates cares if the clinic has a roof right now. She knows you're here. That's what matters." Clara looked at her hands. Black with mud. Nails broken. These hands had delivered a baby in a soddy by lamplight. Had set bones, stitched wounds, drawn infection from festering cuts. These hands had built something and watched it collapse. Could they build again? Her body ached. Her pride hurt worse. She'd been so sure, so confident. Thought she had it figured out. Thought she could make this work. And the first real setback, she'd fallen apart. Literally fallen in mud and sat there like a child. But Jacob was right. What was it for if she quit now? She stood, her skirt squelched, dripped muddy water on the floor. "We'll need lumber. Better lumber this time. And a steeper roof pitch so water runs off better." Jacob stood too. "I'll ride to town tomorrow. Sell some head, get supplies. I'll need help rebuilding. Miguel and Tommy. Already offered. Pete, too, once his shoulder's right. That old man can't lift lumber. That old man can hold boards steady. He said so himself. With several words I won't repeat." Clara almost smiled. Almost. They walked outside together. The yard was churned mud black and slick, and ankle deep. The barn stood, damaged but standing. The house had weathered it. The bunkhouse was fine. The clinic section that could be rebuilt would be rebuilt. Stronger. Clara looked at the mountains. Still there. Still purple and distant and unconcerned. The storm had passed. The sun was shining. The prairie grass bent in the breeze, already drying. She was covered in mud. Her clinic was destroyed. And she'd sat in filthy water, questioning everything she'd done. But she was still here. Still standing, Miguel and Tommy emerged from the bunkhouse. Pete behind them. Moving slow, they walked to the barn, stood looking at the damage. "When do we start?" Miguel asked. Clara wiped mud off her face. It smeared. "Now. We start now." They spent the day sorting through debris, salvaging what could be saved. Boards that weren't warped. Nails that weren't rusted. Tools that still worked. Clara pulled supplies from the mud. Cleaned them best she could. Were ruined beyond saving. Some might work. By evening, they had a pile of salvageable materials. Not much, but something. Jacob brought dinner to her room, cornmeal mush and bacon. Clara ate standing up. Too tired to sit. Too tired to change out of her ruined clothes. That night, she lay on the rope bed and stared at the ceiling. Her body hurt. Her pride hurt. But something else stirred underneath something stubborn and mean and determined. The storm had knocked them down, but not out. In the morning, Jacob would ride to town, would sell cattle, would come back with lumber and supplies and everything they needed to start again. And they would start again. Stronger. Better. Clara closed her eyes. Sleep came hard, but it came. She dreamed of whitewashed walls, clean floors, shelves stocked and organized, patients coming through the door, the clinic rising from the ruins. When she woke before dawn, she knew what she had to do. But first, she needed to see exactly how much they'd lost. The next 3 weeks, Clara learned what her hands could do besides medicine. Jacob left at dawn the day after the storm, took 6 head of cattle to town, 3 steers and 3 heifers, the best he had, came back at dusk with lumber stacked in the wagon bed. Pine boards, rough cut but solid, cedar shingles for the roof, split by hand, a keg of square nails, 2 gallons of whitewash in sealed tins. The morning after that, they started. Miguel and Tommy carried the warped, water-damaged boards out of the clinic section, piled them behind the barn. Some could be salvaged for other projects. Most were only good for burning. Pete directed traffic, one arm still bound to his chest, bellowing orders about which boards to keep and which to toss. Clara worked alongside them, pulled nails from salvaged lumber, each nail precious, each one saved and straightened. Her palms blistered. The blisters popped. New skin grew underneath. Tougher. Jacob framed the walls first, set posts, secured crossbeams, checked everything with a level of brass instrument that showed when things were true. Clara watched him work, the way he measured twice before cutting, the way he tested each joint before nailing it, building something to last. The roof went up next. Double pitch this time, steep enough that snow would slide off come winter, steep enough that water wouldn't pool and rot the shingles. Miguel and Tommy worked on ladders, passing shingles up. Jacob nailed them, working in overlapping rows from bottom to top. Clara fed everyone at midday, cornmeal mush and bacon, same as every meal, but nobody complained. They ate standing up, too tired to sit, then went back to work. On the 4th day, a wagon appeared. Mrs. Yates drove, her husband beside her, 3 sons in the back. They brought lumber old planking from a shed they'd torn down, gray with age but solid. "For the clinic," Mrs. Yates said. "For what you did for Emma." Emma rode in the back, her bandaged arm cradled careful. The burn was healing clean. Clara had checked it 3 days after the storm. Pink skin growing over the damaged tissue. The white patch would scar, but the hand would work. The Yates men joined the building. Young and strong, they climbed like goats, had the new shingles on by nightfall. 2 days later, a German family arrived, the Krugers, the widow and her 2 grown daughters. They brought paintbrushes and buckets, whitewash powder already mixed. The women took over the walls, painting with long strokes, white covering gray, clean covering damaged. More neighbors came. The Johnsons from the East Section homesteaders, running a small operation, brought nails and labor, and 3 sons who could hammer straight. The Martinez family from the South Ridge, the O'Connells, the Swensons, people Clara had treated, people who'd paid in eggs and firewood and dried beans. They came to repay in sweat and muscle and time. A man Clara didn't know arrived on the 8th day. Older, weathered, drove a wagon with careful hands. "Doc Morrison's widow," he said. "Heard you lost equipment in the storm. She's got his old examination table. Says you can have it if you'll come get it." Jacob and Miguel rode to town, came back with the table strapped in the wagon bed, scarred pine, stained dark in places, but solid. 4 sturdy legs, a flat surface. It would work. Women came with canning jars, dozens of them, clear glass, wire bales, rubber seals. "For organizing," they said. Clara filled them needles and sutures in 1 jar, bandage rolls in another, carbolic-soaked cotton pledgets in a 3rd, each jar labeled in her careful printing. The clinic took shape. Whitewashed walls, bright, clean, reflecting lamplight. Shelves built from repurposed barnwood, sturdy and level. The examination table positioned near the window for natural light. A curtain hung on brass rings, flour-sack muslin, stitched tight by Mrs. Kruger's daughters. Privacy for examining women. A stove arrived, donated by a rancher whose daughter Clara had delivered last month. Not new, but functional. Jacob piped it into the barn's main chimney. Heat for sterilizing instruments. Heat for the cold months coming. By the 3rd week, the clinic stood finished. Better than before the storm. Stronger. Clara stood in the doorway. Looked at what they'd built. What she'd built. With her blistered hands and aching back. What the community had built together. The walls gleamed white. The shelves held supplies, not as many as before, but enough. The examination table waited. The stove radiated heat. A lamp hung from the ceiling, ready for night work. This was real. This would last. Opening day came in late September, morning cold enough to show breath, but the sun broke warm through thin clouds. The young father arrived first, carried his son boy, maybe 6, cradling his left arm wrong. "Mule kicked him. Think it's broke." Clara led them inside. The clinic smelled new whitewash and pine and possibility. "Lay him here." The boy whimpered when Clara touched his arm. She felt along the bone-clean fracture through the ulna, halfway between elbow and wrist. Displacement minimal. Good. "This is going to hurt," she told the boy. Direct. Honest. "But then it'll be better." "Can you be brave?" The boy's chin trembled. He nodded. Clara grasped his wrist and elbow, pulled steady traction. The boy screamed thin and high. She felt the bone ends align. Held them. Jacob. Splint. Jacob passed the splint pine wood shaped and sanded smooth, padded with cloth. Clara positioned it, tied it snug with strips of muslin, elevated the arm on a folded blanket. 4 weeks, she told the father. Keep it still. Come back in 10 days. The father pulled a wrapped bundle from his coat. Ham? Smoked it myself. That's fine. Thank you. He left. The boy already looked better, pain easing now that the bone was set. By the end of the first week, 8 more patients had found the clinic. A rancher's wife, laboring since dawn. Clara rode out in the wagon 2 hours to the homestead. The woman was exhausted. The baby stuck. Clara worked through the night, felt for position, turned the baby gentle, persistent. The head crowned at dawn. A girl, red and angry and perfect. Clara rode back as the sun climbed, her dress stained with birth fluids, her body hollow with exhaustion. But something burned warm in her chest. Purpose, belonging, an elderly man with a tooth gone bad, the whole side of his face swollen. Fever climbing. Clara held his head steady, worked the forceps around the rotten tooth. It came out in pieces. She had him rinse with whiskey. He spat blood and pus into a basin. The swelling would take days to subside, but the infection source was gone. He paid in firewood. A month's worth, delivered and stacked. A child with scarlet fever, mild, but still dangerous. Clara isolated her in the bunkhouse corner, dosed her with quinine bark tea, kept her cool with wet cloths. The rash faded over 5 days. The mother brought eggs every week after. A ranch hand with barbed wire cuts, deep gashes across his palms and forearms. 20 stitches, placed neat and close. He paid in labor, built Clara a medicine cabinet. 12 drawers, each one fitted perfect. Labeled in careful printing, bandages, sutures, carbolic, laudanum. The clinic worked. People came. Clara treated them. They paid what they could. The system held. One evening, first week of October, Clara sat on the bench facing west. The air had turned cold, autumn settling in serious now. The mountains showed snow on their peaks. Jacob brought coffee, sat beside her. They'd fallen into this rhythm end of each day. This bench, these mugs, this quiet. Stars pricked through the darkening sky. Crickets sang, though fainter now with the cold, somewhere distant. Geese honked flying south in formation Clara couldn't see. You know I'm falling in love with you, Jacob said. Not a question. Statement. Matter of fact. Like saying the sky was blue or winter was coming. Clara's breath caught, held. She'd known. Felt it in the way he looked at her across the breakfast table, the way he always made sure she had enough coffee, the way his hand lingered when passing her a hammer during the building, the way he watched her work with patience, not hovering, just present, just there. She could deflect, make a joke, protect herself from the possibility of more hurt. After Thomas, after everything. But she was tired of protecting herself, tired of building walls when what she needed were foundations. I know, she said. Her voice came out steady. I am too. Simple, true, no poetry, no grand declarations, just fact, like his had been. Jacob turned his head, looked at her in the failing light. Didn't plan on this. Neither did I. After Sarah, He stopped. His jaw worked. Feels like I'm being alive. Clara's hand found his on the bench between them. Maybe she'd want that for you. His hand closed around hers, rough with calluses, scarred from old injuries, strong, real. Here. They sat like that while full dark came. Didn't kiss, not yet. Didn't need more words. Just hands clasped, breathing the same air, watching stars appear one by one. The clinic stood behind them, white walls catching moonlight. Inside, shelves stocked with supplies. The examination table, waiting. The stove, cold but ready. Everything they'd built together. In the bunkhouse, Miguel and Tommy and Pete slept, healing, strong enough now to work, to help, to live. Around them in the darkness, homesteads dotted the prairie, families sleeping in their sadis and frame houses and tents, people who knew now that help was close. That being poor didn't mean suffering alone. Clara thought about the woman whose baby she'd delivered by lamplight, about Emma's scarred but functioning hand, about the elderly man whose tooth she'd pulled, the child whose fever she'd broken, the ranch hand whose hands she'd stitched back together. She thought about the telegram form she'd crumpled in the Western Union office, the 3 job offers she'd refused. Thomas's letter. Can't go through with it. You'll understand someday. She understood now, not his cowardice, but what it had freed her to become. This life sitting on a rough bench with a scarred cowboy, coffee cooling in tin mugs, her hands capable and strong, a clinic behind her and patients who needed her. This was better than anything she'd planned. Better than Philadelphia drawing rooms and hospital politics. Better than being Thomas's wife in whatever town he'd dragged her to. Better than living small and safe and suffocated. We should get married, Jacob said. Not a question, just a statement. Like he'd been thinking about it and finally said it out loud. Clara's thumb rubbed across his knuckles. Yes, we should. When? When the circuit preacher comes through next month. In the clinic. Where else? Jacob's mouth quirked. Almost a smile. Sarah would like that. They sat until the coffee went cold, until the stars wheeled overhead, until the cold drove them inside. That night, Clara lay in her rope bed and listened to the house settle. Jacob's footsteps in his room, the room that would be theirs soon, the stove ticking as it cooled, the wind outside, carrying the smell of coming winter, everything she'd lost Philadelphia. Thomas. The life she'd planned seemed distant now, like it had happened to someone else. This was her life. These rough buildings, this hard land, these people who paid in eggs and firewood and smoked ham. She'd found her place. But in the darkness, a question whispered. What happened when word spread, when more people came than she could treat alone? When winter closed, the roads and emergencies couldn't wait. What happened when her clinic became more than one woman could manage? Early June, nearly a year since Clara stepped off the train in Prospect with 38 cents and a broken engagement. She woke to knocking quiet but persistent. Her room was still dark. Sky through the window showing deep blue edging toward gray. Clara, Jacob's voice, rough with sleep. You awake? She sat up. The rope bed creaked. I am now. Need to show you something. Get dressed. It's barely dawn. I know. Please. She pulled on the wool skirt, hers now, bought with money from a grateful patient, a clean blouse, pinned her hair up quick, most of it escaping immediately, splashed water on her face from the basin, cold enough to make her gasp. Outside, Jacob waited with 2 horses saddled, the roan gelding he always rode, and a smaller mare, gentle disposition, easy gait. He'd been teaching Clara to ride over the past months. She wasn't good at it, but she could stay on. Where are we going? You'll see. They rode northeast, toward the ridge above the ranch. The sky lightened as they climbed gray to pink to gold at the edges. The grass smelled wet with dew. A hawk circled overhead. Riding thermals Clara couldn't feel. At the ridgetop, Jacob dismounted, helped Clara down. His hands stayed on her waist a second longer than necessary. She didn't mind. So he removed his hat, turned it in his hands. The brim was warped from this nervous habit, bent out of shape, creased. I'm not good with words. Never was. You do fine. This past year, he stopped. Started again. You made this place alive again. Made me alive again. Another stop. His fingers worked the hat brim. And I know it's only been a year, and maybe you want to wait. But I'm not getting younger, and I'm not good at... Jacob. He looked up, met her eyes. Are you asking me to marry you? His throat worked. Yeah, I am. The words came out rough. I love you, Clara. I want mornings and nights and everything between. Will you marry me? Behind him, the sun broke over the mountains. Gold light flooded the valley, the ranch, the clinic, the garden, the barn, the house. Everything they'd built together, washed in new light. Clara saw their future. More patience, more healing. Children may be hers and his. Growing old on that porch bench, watching these mountains, drinking bitter coffee from chipped tin mugs. Yes. The word came out easy, sure. Yes, I'll marry you. Jacob didn't whoop or spin her around and just pulled her too close, careful, like she might break, and she'd have held him just as tight. He was solid, real. Here, the sun climbed, the valley warmed, their horses cropped grass nearby, patient. Eventually they rode back down, made breakfast together in the kitchen, cornmeal mush and bacon, coffee strong enough to scour, ate standing up because neither could sit still. When, Clara asked, circuit preacher comes through end of June. The clinic. Where else? She almost laughed. Almost. Getting married in a barn clinic they'd built from salvaged lumber and community labor, and sheer stubbornness. Sarah would like that. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of normal work. Patients came. Clara treated them. The garden needed tending. The chickens needed feeding. Miguel's wife, Carmen, brought cloth for a wedding dress, simple white muslin. Nothing fancy. Clara and Mrs. Yates sewed it together on the kitchen table, stitching by lamplight after the day's work finished. Late June, the circuit preacher arrived on his monthly rounds, an older man, Bible worn soft at the edges, pages loose from the binding. He agreed to perform the ceremony in 2 days. Wedding day dawned clear, cold morning warming fast. By noon, heat pressed down. The clinic smelled like carbolic and pine and wildflowers someone had picked that morning, purple columbine, red Indian paintbrush, yellow lupine, arranged in a jar on the examination table. Clara dressed in her room. The white muslin hung loose. She'd lost weight over the year, working too hard to remember meals sometimes. Mrs. Yates helped her pin it tighter, adjusted the collar, pinned Clara's hair up proper. Her mother's jet brooch at the throat, only thing she'd kept from Philadelphia besides her medical instruments. You look beautiful, Mrs. Yates said. Clara looked in the small mirror. saw a woman she barely recognized. Tanned from working in the garden, hands rough with calluses, capable, strong. Not the refined Philadelphia nurse who'd stepped off that train. Better. Jacob waited in the clinic. He'd borrowed a suit too tight in the shoulders, the fabric pulling when he moved. Tommy had helped him with the celluloid collar and silk tie. He looked uncomfortable. Dear. The clinic was full. Miguel and Carmen with their children, Tommy and his sweetheart, Pete, cleaned up almost beyond recognition, Mrs. Yates and her family, the Krugers, the Johnsons, the Martinez family, the O'Connells, people Clara had treated, people who'd helped build this place, standing shoulder to shoulder in the small room. The preacher opened his Bible. The leather cover, cracked old binding, well used. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here. Clara didn't hear most of it. Too aware of Jacob's hand holding hers. Too aware of the people watching, not judging, just present, bearing witness. Do you, Jacob Cole, take this woman? I do. Do you, Clara Margaret Brennan, take this man? I do. The words felt heavy, real, not like promises that could be broken with a two-line letter, like vows that meant something. The preacher smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss your bride. Jacob's kiss was brief, appropriate for public, but his hand at the small of her back promised more later. The clinic erupted, cheering, clapping. As someone produced a fiddle, started playing a reel. The examination table got pushed aside. People danced on the whitewashed floor Clara had helped paint. Outside, under the cottonwood trees, a celebration. Someone had baked a white cake with boiled icing. The sugar worked by hand until it stiffened. There was dancing and laughter. Children ran wild, playing tag between the buildings. The fiddle played waltzes now, slower, sweeter. Jacob toasted with whiskey someone had brought. To Sarah, who dreamed this. His voice caught, but held. And to Clara, who made it real. People shared stories, how Clara had stitched them up, delivered their babies, sat with their dying, brought them back from fever. Each story another thread binding her to this place. These people. Mrs. Yates gave Clara a quilt. Made from scraps, she said. Every piece from someone you helped. Clara unfolded it. Recognized fabric, a piece of Emma's dress from when she'd come with the burn, a patch from Tommy's shirt from his first days injured, cloth from the sheets she'd used binding Miguel's ribs, pieces of all of them, stitched together into something warm and whole. So you remember, Mrs. Yates said, as if Clara could forget. The sun set. People left gradually, families with children to put to bed, ranchers with early morning work. Eventually, just Clara and Jacob remained. They walked to the house together. Neither spoke. Words felt unnecessary. Inside, Jacob's room, their room now, he'd cleaned it, made the bed with fresh sheets, left a lamp burning low on the washstand. Clara's hands shook slightly when she unpinned her hair. Not fear, just awareness of the line they were crossing. From alone to together, from two damaged people to something new. Jacob helped with the buttons down her back, his fingers clumsy, catching on the tiny loops. Sorry, not good at this. Neither am I. They figured it out together, later, wrapped in sheets that smelled like lye soap and sunshine. Clara lay with her head on Jacob's chest. His heart beat steady under her ear. His hand traced patterns on her shoulder, absent-minded. Gentle. Through the window, stars wheeled. bright and hard and distant. "You awake?" Jacob's voice rumbled in his chest. "Yeah. You happy?" Clara thought about it. Really thought. Happiness seemed too small a word for what she felt. Content. Rooted. Home. "Yes," she said finally. "I am." They slept. Dawn came too early. Clara woke to gray light and Jacob already up standing at the window in his union suit. Watching the sun paint the mountains gold and rose, she joined him, wrapped a quilt around her shoulders, Mrs. Yates's quilt, every piece a memory. Jacob's arm came around her, pulled her close. They looked out at the ranch, the clinic visible from here, white walls catching first light, the barn, the bunkhouse, the garden, the chickens starting to fuss in their coop, everything they'd built, everything they'd become. A wagon appeared in the distance, coming fast. Even from here, Clara could tell someone hurt or sick. Always someone. "Should we get dressed?" Not complaining, just asking. Jacob kissed her forehead, his beard scraped gentle against her skin. "In a minute. Let me have this minute." So they stood there as summer morning light flooded the room, golden, warm, spilling across the floor, catching dust motes in the air. The wagon got closer. Someone was calling, urgent voice carrying across the prairie. Clara would go soon, would pull on her clothes, grab her medical satchel, run to help whoever needed her. That was her work, her purpose, her calling. But for this minute, this 1 minute, she and Jacob just stood in the light, together, alive, beginning, below. The clinic waited, above. The mountains stood eternal. Around them, the prairie stretched endless gold grass bending in morning wind. Alive with possibility. This was the life she'd found when the life she'd planned fell apart. These rough buildings, this hard land, these people who paid in eggs and labor and smoked ham. This man with his scarred arm and tired eyes who'd seen her refuse 3 job offers and asked what she was really looking for. She'd found it. Found herself. Found home. The wagon pulled into the yard. A man jumped down, shouting for the nurse. Clara recognized him, homesteader from the west section. His wife must be in labor. 3rd baby. Should be straightforward, but you never knew. She kissed Jacob quick. "I need to go." "I know." She dressed fast, grabbed her satchel, ran across the yard toward the wagon, her boots kicking up dust. The morning sun warm on her shoulders, behind her. Jacob stood in the window, watching, always there, and ahead, always ahead, someone who needed help, someone she could save. The work never stopped. The patients kept coming. The clinic doors stayed open, and Clara ran toward it all with capable hands and a full heart, ready for whatever came next. There's something quiet that settles in after a story like Clara's, something unresolved. Perhaps, or familiar in ways we don't always name. The weight of starting over when everything you planned has fallen away. The unexpected grace of finding purpose where you least expected it. These aren't lessons so much as recognitions, moments that sit tender in the chest. Many of us have known what it is to arrive somewhere with less than we hoped. To be seen by a stranger when we felt most lost. To build something worthwhile from what felt like ruins. Some of us have learned that the life we didn't choose can become the life we needed. Perhaps you've carried your own version of Clara's dusty platform, Jacob's scarred hands, that clinic rising from storm damage, different details, same human shape. It's all right if the story doesn't tie up neatly. Real life rarely does. Some things are allowed to rest unfinished, to remain tender rather than resolved. The not knowing can be as true as the knowing. Thank you for staying with Clara and Jacob, for lending your quiet attention to their imperfect, honest beginning. It means more than you might imagine.